Historically, and I mean, this has been going on for hundreds of years, and until at least the cardinals decided to take the role upon themselves to elect a pope and also to lock themselves inside the place, in this case, the Sistine Chapel, the election of the pope was a matter also of noble families who wanted to just push for, you know, their preferred ones, even their relatives, to become popes.
So popes were once chosen by acclamation up until about 1000. So you would just get all your friends to go sit in the piazza and say, oh, I want Uncle Bob. And so next thing you know, you have these popes that really constitute a very, very terrible moment in the church. And the church learned from that. And so it created a system of electors, of cardinals. Then it created a way to keep the cardinals separate, because then they had little problems with the cardinals themselves. And then they created a way for the cardinals. And even up until 1996 and even up until Benedict XVI, they're tweaking the process constantly.
But Anna, also, if I may, the actual name conclave is very fascinating, and the reason why they're locked inside the Sistine Chapel, that comes from the 13th century, when the cardinals, that was the longest election in history. After 1,000 days following the death of the Pope there, they just couldn't make their mind up. They couldn't find a compromise. This was not in Rome, it was in Viterbo. It's a town that is about an hour and a half drive from here, from Rome. And at that point, the people there grew so unnerved and frustrated that they decided to force the cardinals to lock themselves into the papal palace there. It was where they were holding the election, and just ration food and water until they made a decision, and that worked. And since then, essentially, it has been the cum clava, the wheat, it means wheat key in Latin, right?
Since then, it's gotten better. The 1,006-day conclave was rather a low part, a low point in the conclave.
It's been 2 days.
I think three cardinal electors died while that was happening, so we're going to hope none of that happens this time around.
Oh my. And talking about the, the Sistine Chapel where this is all taking place, some of us have had the privilege of visiting there. They receive about 5 million visitors every year that go through the Sistine Chapel. What's really interesting is, again, that this is such a conclave is such an event that is steeped in tradition and history, with 150 of these conclaves having taken place inside the Sistine Chapel, dating all the way back to 1492. And you talked about what came prior to that, but it doesn't look like this typically when you're a visitor going into the Sistine Chapel. I mean, to see now all of these desks laid out, we know that things have been sealed. Again, there's sort of signal scrambling technology to make sure that there's no contact with the outside world. What is the significance more broadly in terms of informing ultimately the smoke we see coming out of the Sistine Chapel down the road, Claudio, of having, this inside this most sacred space that is also very accessible on any other given day?
Well, perhaps the Sistine Chapel is the most recognizable icon, essentially, of the Catholic Church, not only because of where it is, it's also who painted it. It wasn't just Michelangelo. There is the whole book of Genesis there painted on the ceiling. There is the famous creation of Adam. There is the Last Judgment, as we can see in some of these pictures. And even the cardinals themselves, when they enter the Sistine Chapel, they probably feel this upon them. They feel like they are in this small enclosed world of God, which is where the Last Judgment is. They are making a judgment in front of the Last Judgment, and they are being judged by God for doing that. But I will ask Liz, who is actually one of the most renowned experts of the Sistine Chapel in the world, so she can probably give us a bit more of that.
I want to take our attention away from the ceiling in the Last Judgment to specifically point out two paintings in the Sistine Chapel that